From the News Channel 5 network, this is Morning Line with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. I'm Nick Beres, coming to you live and direct on this Monday from News Channel 5. We've got a good show on tap for you, as always. Invite you to join in the conversation. We're going to be looking and taking your phone calls, 737-7587, at one of the most recent ongoing investigations revealed by the News Channel 5 I-team, headed up by our chief investigative reporter, Phil Williams. He's a very busy guy, and whenever he's available to come on this program during an ongoing investigation, we will have him if he's nice enough to come on, and here he is with us this morning. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. I see you dressed up for me.
Hi, look, you know me, I'm more casual these days. You always looking very dapper. It's good to have you on, Phil. Thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely.
You know, revealed, a lot of people, obviously, the whole state has been following your investigation on this. These are the nature of these investigations that you set up. They're just not one-piece investigations. They're ongoing.
No, and we started Revealed out knowing it was going to be a year-long project.
Amazing.
Because there's just so much happening in our state government right now that, you know, without a consistent focus, we really felt like there were issues that people needed to understand, that we needed to use the phrase, we needed to reveal what was really happening with state government.
Yep.
And so we started out doing intensive research. Actually, Revealed was born during my Christmas break.
Okay, I was going to ask you. How so? How so?
Well, because you know, I usually take about 2 weeks off at the end of the year, and I always like to have an idea of what I'm going to work on when I come back. And I didn't have a clue this year.
Yeah,
and so I spent a full week of my break brainstorming about what the coming year would look like.
Yeah.
And so Revealed came out of that kind of end of the year, looking back at what we've done, looking ahead to what, you know, I might like to do. And honestly, personally, I feel like, you know, I'm doing some of my best work these days, just because there's so much going on in state government, so much going on in education that people really don't understand. To be honest with you, some days I feel like I'm just scratching the surface because there's just so much going on behind the scenes.
I know, and to keep in mind, Revealed, as you said, it was a broad-based topic. I learned so much from your piece looking, and we're in the news business and we cover this. I learned so much about behind the scenes with lobbyists and the money and how it plays out and how it goes, and you trying to get into some of these meetings, and, you know, whether you're allowed in and how it works out. The average individual doesn't get to see these. A lot of folks don't know it unless they see your stories. Yeah,
you know, and that was interesting for me because I knew about these pre-session fundraisers the day and a half before a session starts, because thankfully due to some scandals of the past, lawmakers cannot raise money during a session. So what do? They backload it.
Yep, there's always a way.
And so that day and a half before the legislature gavels into session, you have the most powerful people on Capitol Hill hosting fundraisers. And these lobbyists who want to get things accomplished during the coming session, they feel an obligation to show up with checks in hand. And we saw that in a way that we've never seen before. Just this pattern of, okay, we want something from these lawmakers, so we've got to pay up.
The absolute most ridiculous thing I hear coming out of the mouth of any lawmakers is that that kind of money does not buy influence. And if you believe that, you're an idiot, okay? It buys influence. What it is, and I've called it all along, they may not want to call it, it's a bribe, period. I'm giving you a ton of money. You don't think the people giving money to these lawmakers are expecting something in return?
Yeah, a lot of the ethics groups...
It's legal, it's legal.
Right,
but
I was going to say, a lot of the ethics groups call it legalized bribery.
That's exactly what it is. And to call it anything else is absurd. These lawmakers sitting there, well, you know, he gave me $100,000, whatever, however. Doesn't buy me influence. Come on.
Well, and we found a brochure from the Realtors Association that said their money, quote, buys us a seat at the table.
Can't be any more clear than that. Now let's move on to, of course, that was a terrific piece, but we're right now in Revealed looking at the whole issue with Hillsdale College. And maybe if you can, for some of our viewers, and we're going to have a preview piece that we're going to run about what's going to air tonight, which is just the latest in all of this. A little bit of a primer about how you got onto this, and of course the video that was stunning, and how you moved forward with it to where we are now.
Well, this really began with the governor's own State of the State address back in January, I guess it was, where he announced a, quote, partnership with Hillsdale College. Honestly, this is on me. I had never heard of Hillsdale College. Okay. I think most of our viewers had never heard of Hillsdale College. But it is an ultra-conservative private Christian college in Michigan that has become very powerful within the part of the Republican Party most associated with former President Trump.
Okay.
And so that they have enormous influence in that section of the Republican Party. So basically, he was announcing this partnership. He was wanting Hillsdale to come in and open up 50 to 100 of their charter schools across the state.
That was the governor wanting to do this.
The governor was wanting this. Now, again, some people may not be familiar with the word, the term charter schools. Charter schools get set up under the auspices of a local government or the state government, but they get taxpayer money for schools that are run by private organizations. In some parts of the country, they're run by for-profit corporations. Not in Tennessee. So they're private or taxpayer-funded, privately operated schools.
Okay.
Hillsdale has I guess you would call it a super patriotic approach to education. That they emphasize what is great about America. Really de-emphasize the problems that we've had as a country. So our first investigation involving Hillsdale was actually looking at their curriculum. And I thought it was pretty insightful that their curriculum teaches that the civil rights movement quickly moved away from the founders' true intent. That laws against discrimination in restaurants and theaters, hotels, motels, that was, quote, where the line began to blur about constitutional rights. Basically, they argue that business owners had a constitutional right to say, we don't want blacks in our business. And so that is what Hillsdale teaches, and that gives you a real insight into how they want to teach students. And so that was our first investigation, and then that led to this hidden camera video where the president of Hillsdale College appeared with Governor Lee and basically badmouthed teachers. Public school teachers come from the dumbest parts of the dumbest colleges.
By now, people all across the country have seen this video.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just looking right before I came into the studio. There's a new national story about this incident that we caught on hidden camera. And so here's the thing. If you have been around the school privatization efforts, you probably have heard this kind of talk before behind closed doors. What we did was capture it on video.
What you mean is that it's been rumored or whatever, but never on video, that they're bashing the public school teachers and the public school system behind closed doors.
Right. And I started reading a book this weekend. It came out 2 years ago. I think it's called The Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door or something like that. And it really is about how that there has been this consistent push, really starting with integration, to be able to use taxpayer funding for private schools or for charter schools, to look at ways that education can create business opportunities for companies that want to run schools.
Yeah.
And so this is part of a pattern that has played out over the last 50 years.
Now, Hillsdale has this ideology, as you just talked about, or what it is that they teach. Charter schools in general, Phil, again, for people who maybe aren't as familiar, they're going to have sometimes, do they typically have a slant along those lines of what we hear with Hillsdale? Maybe not the same, but I mean, do they have more leeway to take an approach that maybe the public schools don't?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
because charter schools, by definition, do get waivers from certain things that are required for traditional public schools. But you know, I think Hillsdale is more extreme. A lot of charter schools have tried to find their own niche and to figure out, okay, we want to teach in a slightly different way. I mean, Rocket Ship, for example, is a chain of charter schools. They rely on computers more than they rely on teachers to teach kids. Kids will spend a lot of time in front of the computer.
Yeah.
Getting lessons instead of from a teacher. So each charter school brings its own unique approach. You know, there's one school that kind of focuses on nature, and but as far as a political agenda, Hillsdale is certainly the most extreme that we've seen. You know, being outright obvious that yes, we have an agenda.
Okay, so after this video played and those stories created a firestorm, there was certainly an awful lot of reaction to it. And there have been stories since then, leading up to what we're going to talk about coming up tonight. But so once that aired, all of a sudden then, and I've seen you go to ask the governor questions, has he stepped back in your coverage from the support of it to some degree? Early on, you could tell he didn't really come out and dispute what the Hillsdale president, Larry Arnn was saying.
Yeah, he has not disputed. You ask him about this, he'll talk about how great teachers are.
But he sat there while Arnn was slamming all the teachers.
Right, and he has not come out and condemned Arnn's comments. And so I think he's trying, it appears he's trying to have it both ways, that he wants to be able to distance himself from Hillsdale, at least publicly, and yet at the same time refusing to condemn them. So he's sort of on the fence with his public pronouncements about Hillsdale.
All right, well, as they say, this story has legs, and we have a lot more we're going to talk about. We'll take a break. We have some phone calls. When we come back, we'll talk about kind of more of the reaction, what's happened with regard to school districts that have voted against Hillsdale, but the question of can it still come here, and then leading up to this poll you're talking about in tonight's piece, which will be very interesting. So we can take some phone calls. Education. Some would say what we're dealing with and what Phil's stories are is what's happening in this country, a battle over the education of young minds moving forward and how they'll be taught and what they'll be taught. We'll be back with more right after this.